Hello everyone, welcome back to another episode of r/PettyRevenge. In today's episode, she expected an inheritance from my late husband. I ruined his obnoxious phone calls. Neighbor had 2 break-ins after not calling to have the door repaired. Before we get started, make sure to subscribe so you will never miss a video. So let's get started. She expected an inheritance from my late husband. My husband passed away 2 years ago. He was a remodeler who had a broad list of clients. For a time, to help out the adult daughter, let's call her Kiki, of my good friend of 42 years, Ami. He would hire her as a helper on some of his larger remodeling projects. During that time, Kay would occasionally borrow things for her own projects: a portable CD player, a pair of channel locks, a winch and come-along, a table saw, chainsaw, a Graco cart paint sprayer, and an air compressor and nail gun. They were all borrowed clean, in working order, in good condition with all relevant parts included. Every single one of them was returned with great delays, all broken and missing significant parts and a crap ton of excuses. Over 2 years, Kiki managed to cost him nearly $5,000 in losses. Finally, he also quit hiring her as a helper because he caught her stealing from one of his clients and forced her to put the item she took right back and then kicked her off the job immediately. Last September, I was visiting Ami and Kiki was there. And then Kiki hit me up for what she called her promised inheritance, which was the first I ever heard about it. Given that my hubby and I spent the 8 years of his terminal illness talking about what he wanted after his death, given that he gifted things of his that he wanted friends to have before he died, I knew well he didn't intend for Kiki to have anything. My husband left no will. Ami knew that my hubby had quit lending her tools after getting the cart paint sprayer back. It was a $1,200 purchase and was less than 4 months old when it was borrowed and returned broken in ways the warranty would not cover. Ami also knew Kiki's attempted theft had caused him to refuse to have her work on anything with him for any reason. Ami was also a victim of her daughter stealing from her as well. Now, our state is a community property state. When a spouse dies without a will, only the surviving spouse inherits, so Ami told her daughter to back off, and I got the bright idea of how I was going to handle getting rid of all that broken stuff which was still taking up room in the tool shed, so I told her I'd be sure to pick something out for her even though her own behavior was the root cause of the bad blood between herself and my husband. So, the next day, with Ami's help, I dropped off all the broken tools and the busted up CD player Kiki borrowed from my hubby at her apartment. Kiki wanted to know what I expected her to do with all of it. I told her that I expected her to do with them whatever it was she had expected my hubby to do with them after she returned them in the condition they were in. Now, she is the proud owner of a bunch of useless tools, and I got to reclaim nearly 35 square feet of space in what is now my tool shed. Beauty. And she really can't/shouldn't complain, as she obviously felt they were in just fine and acceptable condition when she returned them. This is indeed very sweet revenge. I especially love the fact that her own mom helped OP dump the stuff there. Like just extra, deserved, salt in the wound. Wow, she sees you after your husband passes, who helped her frequently, and her first instinct was to ask about what money and inheritance she feels entitled to? Makes sense, because she's also a thief who feels entitled to help herself to things that don't belong to her. You did well. I'm sure Kay will look at all the broken items and remember your husband fondly. And this is how you put an entitled wench in her place. The audacity to think she deserved anything from your husband's estate, SMH. I love this. I have no doubt that somewhere, your husband is laughing and is very proud of you. Ha ha ha, excellent. Little note, could you edit it to give them names instead of letters? Would be easier to read. I ruined his obnoxious phone calls. I was on a 4-hour train ride, in a small compartment of 6 seats. One guy in a business suit joined me. I was sitting in the window seat facing the direction the train was going, he was sitting in the middle seat in the opposite direction. I watched a movie on my laptop, obviously with headphones, didn't think to add it until a commenter asked. He was typing away on his. Then his phone rang, he took the call and started talking as if he was alone in the room. You know, asking how the caller's day is going, taking his sweet time to chat with them. I thought this was rude, but who knows, maybe it's his niece who calls twice a year max. After 10 or so minutes, he hangs up and I can turn off the subtitles. If I had turned up the volume enough to drown out his babbling, I would have probably gotten a tinnitus after the day. Sometime later, he gets another phone call. And he literally says, No, it's fine, I have plenty of time, WTF man? At this point, I start glaring at him, and when he notices, he kinda looks uncomfortable, but apparently not uncomfortable enough to leave the carriage or speed up his call. The call ends and I can continue my movie in peace. Until that son of a sausage takes out his phone and calls someone. Like, he deliberately decides that I have to listen to one more of his conversations, instead of, I don't know, maybe calling later? Or from somewhere else? Or maybe texting? While he is waiting for the caller to pick up, I finally speak up and ask him to take his calls in the corridor, to which, I shit you not, he raises his stumpy little finger in order to quiet me down and shakes his head. You know, the exact shushing gesture moms use when they are on the phone and their kid comes up to ask for a cupcake? At that point, I had enough. I had zero desire to invest more energy in him by either confronting him again or hunting down the train conductor, but I did have an appetite for the chips I had in my bag, originally intended for vegging out on the sofa after arriving at home. I opened the bag and started eating those bad boys. I didn't smack my lips or eat with an open mouth, because disgusting, but I did bite into each chip as noisily as I could. Dude started to glare daggers at me. Finished his phone call after a few minutes. I put the chips away. After some time, he gets a call. Accepts the call. I take out the chips and start eating. Dude starts glaring daggers, I pretend not to notice. Then finally, he goes, wait a minute, I have trouble to hear you, and takes the call to the corridor. I would have used my speaker to watch the movie during every call. The chips are better and more petty. Theoretically, he could complain about the noise from the movie being too loud, but what's he gonna do about eating chips? Tell the conductor he's eating too loud. Pretend to call someone at the same time, then loudly repeat his side of the conversation every time he speaks. Obnoxious echo. What I have done in these situations is take out my phone and pretend that I am on the other end of an identical conversation, so every time he says something I would respond to what the obnoxious passenger said, but pretend that I was talking to someone else. It freaks people out and turns an annoying situation into a fun game. You have to be able to not look at the person and keep a straight face though. Son of a sausage, definitely using that from now on. This confuses me. Is it rude or socially unacceptable to be on the phone on a train? I once read about a guy who was on the phone with his wife while riding a quiet car on a commuter train. He was trying to reassure her that he had really been working late at the office and was now on his way home. A female passenger, annoyed at him using his phone in a quiet car, leaned over and in a sultry voice said, "Honey, hang up the phone and come back to bed." I feel that's a bit cruel, isn't it? The dude is clearly stressed by long hours at work compounded by an anxious wife at home. This one move adds so much unnecessary stress on him and probably results in a panic in the wife, who knows if this leads to mistrust and eventual breakdown in their marriage, if not cleared up immediately. People need to be a little more understanding and tolerant of other people's circumstances sometimes. I always like to join in on these public phone calls. And if they say anything, remind them that they're the ones talking on speakerphone in a public place. Props for not immediately shouting and cursing him out with the finger waggle. I definitely would've. Neighbor had 2 break-ins after not calling to have the door repaired. This is more in line with the universe taking revenge. Anyhow, you've all had those neighbors that simply don't care. If a fire is about to start in a trash, can they just walk by, because someone else will deal with it? The front door of our apartment complex was broken, so it stood permanently open. There is a number on the wall that goes to the janitor so he can send someone to fix it. I usually always call this number if something important, like the elevator, is broken. This time I figured it was someone else's time to call. It went 3 days and nobody called, then someone broke into my neighbor's apartment by drilling into the lock when she was at work. She then called her insurance company and the insurance company sent someone out to look at it, and the insurance agent asked why the front door was wide open. My neighbor explained that they hadn't fixed it, then the insurance agent asked how long it was since my neighbor had called them. She explained that she had not called anyone, and the insurance agent asked how long it had been like that. She said 5 days, and then the insurance agent told her that she was irresponsible and wouldn't get any insurance money. She paid out of her own pocket for a new lock, then complained to me about it. For more days passed with the door being wide open, then someone broke into her apartment one more time, this time by bending the door of the frame with some sort of machine. She called her insurance agent and it was the same guy who noticed that the front door still wasn't fixed. He asked her why they weren't fixing it, and she said she didn't know. He then asked her if she had called the janitor and she said no. He then asked if she wanted him to call, and she said yes. He then called the janitor in front of her, then just left. Her apartment was completely trashed. I mean, it sucks no one called to have the door repaired, but if I were her I'd get a lawyer to press my claim with the insurance company. Whether or not the building's front door was locked is BS. Her door was locked and someone had to damage it to break in. Should she have called? Sure, but should the insurance company deny the claim? No, they're looking for an excuse to not pay. As a reminder, don't tell the insurance company shit if your claim is significant. They can refer to the police report or speak with your legal representation, which may cost you, but if the claim is big enough it'll cost more to risk saying something that'll lose the entire claim for you. This isn't revenge of any sort. She probably assumed the landlord kept an eye on the property and was doing a good job on maintaining it, not even realizing OP was calling things in. I wonder if OP would still feel good about their revenge if their neighbor had been assaulted, because while other tenants may be able to assume the landlord or janitor were making regular rounds, OP knew for a fact that isn't the case. Why didn't she call the janitor after the first break-in? Of all the stupidest things I've ever heard. I actually asked her that. You're not gonna believe what she said. She said, "I thought someone was gonna do that now that there was a break-in." OP complains that his neighbors simply don't care, then proceeds to not care. YTA. I was thinking the exact same thing. If this was posted, their answer would be YTA. Yeah, this is such a weird response. OP's complaining about people who don't call things in, yet they do the exact same thing with the 2 break-ins, and somehow that's okay, they didn't call. Rules for thee, not for me, apparently. Does the person who got broken into have responsibility for not calling about the door? Yes. Does everyone else have responsibility for not calling about the door? Yes. Also, how does this qualify as petty revenge? Surprised she had the mental horsepower and or forethought to have renter's insurance TBH. She called. As stated in the story. A guy showed up and said you're irresponsible and left. The second time he called and also said not fixed yet. It all fear. Not saying you are the asshole. I'm saying you shouldn't tell anyone this story again. You did nobody, including yourself, a single bit of good. This is stupid. Her door was locked. Why does it matter if an additional door was locked? It's not like one door is the limit on a break-in. Secondly, I agree with her, if there was a break-in, why wasn't the door fixed immediately? I'm assuming since she had the locks changed, a new key was given to someone in charge. That is more than enough to initiate a repair of the door. Overall, seems like a bad property manager. I hope it isn't one of the tenants. If you made it to the end of the video, thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe and share, and we will see you in the next video.